Three superpowers are waging a secret war over territory the size of South America. The stake is control over humanity's future. And this war is happening where most people have never been and never even thought to go, in the Arctic. Trump doesn't just want to buy Greenland for no reason. Behind this are trillions of dollars and the fate of the American empire. Imagine a sea route that cut shipping time from Shanghai to Hamburg from 34 to 14 days. Saving 2.5 times in delivery time means a revolution in global trade. Whoever controls this route gains power over the global economy. This route is called the Northern Sea Route, and it's opening right now thanks to melting Arctic ice. Climate change, which many perceive as a catastrophe, has become the greatest opportunity in human history for geopoliticians. Arctic ice is melting at record speed, exposing territories that have been inaccessible for millennia. Scientists estimate that Arctic sea ice is disappearing at a rate of 13% per decade. What took nature thousands of years to build is vanishing in mere decades, creating opportunities that previous generations could never have imagined. And beneath this ice lie treasures capable of changing the balance of power on the planet. 13% of all the world's oil reserves lie beneath Arctic ice. 30% of the planet's natural gas awaits its moment in Arctic depths. We're talking about approximately 90 billion barrels of oil and 1,600 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. But that's just the beginning.
Rare earth metals, without which modern technology from smartphones to rockets is impossible, lie there in quantities valued at trillions of dollars. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, copper, zinc, everything needed for electric car batteries and the renewable energy infrastructure of the future. Greenland alone is estimated to contain some of the world's largest deposits of rare earth elements, materials that China currently dominates globally. Greenland sits right in the center of this Arctic Klondike. An island larger than Mexico controls key shipping routes and sits on huge mineral deposits. The island's strategic position is unprecedented. It sits between North America and Europe, controlling access to the Arctic Ocean from both the Atlantic and Pacific sides. Now you understand why Trump is so persistent in his purchase plans? This isn't real estate speculation. This is about global supremacy. But the Americans are late to the game. China, a country that geographically doesn't even have Arctic access, already calls itself a near-Arctic state and actively invests billions of dollars in Arctic projects. The audacity is breathtaking. Beijing is over 1,500 kilometers from the Arctic Circle, yet they've declared themselves stakeholders in Arctic affairs. Chinese companies are building mines in Greenland, financing airports and ports, buying up Arctic assets worldwide. They've established the Polar Research Institute of China, launched multiple Arctic expeditions, and even built their own icebreaker fleet. Chinese investment in Arctic nations has grown exponentially, with projects in Russia, Norway, Iceland, and Canada.
Beijing is playing the long game with characteristic patience and strategic thinking. They understand that by 2050, the Arctic will become the new center of the world economy. The Chinese are building a fleet of icebreakers, investing in Arctic technologies, and creating research stations. Their strategy is simple but brilliant: become indispensable in the Arctic region before it fully opens. They're following the same playbook they used in Africa and Southeast Asia: invest heavily, create dependencies, then leverage those relationships for strategic advantage. Russia has a geographical advantage in this race. It has the world's longest Arctic coastline, stretching over 24,000 kilometers. Moscow views the Northern Sea Route as its internal highway and is ready to defend these interests at any cost. This isn't just rhetoric. Russia treats the Arctic as its backyard and has the military presence to back up that claim. Russia has 40 icebreakers versus 2 in the United States. Let that sink in. 40 versus 2. Russian military bases are scattered throughout the Arctic coast, and nuclear submarines patrol under-ice waters year-round. The Northern Fleet, based in Severomorsk, is one of Russia's most powerful military formations, specifically designed for Arctic operations. Putin has repeatedly stated that the Arctic is Russia's future, and these aren't just words. Russia's Arctic strategy includes comprehensive militarization of the region, massive infrastructure development, and creation of entirely new Arctic cities. Murmansk is being transformed into the new Dubai of the North, a port through which trillions of dollars of Arctic trade will flow. Russian companies like Novatek and Gazprom are developing massive liquefied natural gas projects that will reshape global energy markets. The Russian strategy is multi-pronged. They're not just militarizing, they're building civilian infrastructure, developing Arctic shipping capabilities, and creating permanent settlements. Towns like Tiksi and Dudinka are being modernized and expanded. Russia is essentially colonizing the Arctic in real time, creating facts on the ground that will be difficult to challenge later.
Americans realized the threat too late. While Washington was busy with 20-year wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, spending trillions of dollars in desert warfare, competitors were quietly capturing the Arctic. The U.S. has only 2 aging icebreakers, the Polar Star and Polar Sea, and virtually no Arctic infrastructure. American Arctic strategy exists mostly on paper, with grand plans but minimal execution. The contrast is embarrassing for a superpower. While Russia operates nuclear-powered icebreakers that can break through ice several meters thick, America's icebreakers are decades old and frequently break down. The U.S. Coast Guard has been requesting new icebreakers for years, but bureaucracy and budget constraints have delayed progress. This is why Greenland has become so critically important for American interests. Control over this island would give the U.S. a strategic position in the Arctic, access to huge natural resources, and the ability to block Chinese expansion in the region. Greenland is America's last chance not to lose the Arctic race completely. But it's not just about resources and trade routes. The Arctic is becoming a new theater of military confrontation that most people don't even know exists. Underwater internet cables carrying global communications, military satellites providing surveillance coverage, early warning radar systems detecting missile launches, all this critical infrastructure is already deployed in Arctic waters. Cyber attacks on Arctic infrastructure happen regularly, but this doesn't make mainstream news. The attacks are sophisticated and constant, targeting power grids in northern communities, disrupting satellite communications, and probing underwater cable networks. This is modern warfare in its purest form: invisible, deniable, but potentially devastating. Chinese hackers attack Canadian Arctic stations, testing defenses and mapping networks. Russian submarines test American underwater sensors, probing for weaknesses in detection systems. Norwegian fishing vessels become espionage platforms, gathering intelligence under the cover of commercial operations. Even scientific research stations have become fronts for intelligence gathering. The Arctic has already become a zone of invisible war between superpowers, where every weather station could be a listening post, every research vessel might be conducting espionage, and every commercial project could have military implications. This is the new great game, played in the most remote and harsh environment on Earth. Climate change has turned a once inaccessible icy desert into humanity's new frontier. By 2040, scientists predict the Arctic Ocean will be completely ice-free during summer months. This transformation is happening faster than anyone predicted. What climate models suggested would take 50 years is happening in 25. This will open not only new trade routes, but create entirely new conflicts over territory, resources, and sovereignty. International law is murky in the Arctic, with competing territorial claims and unclear boundaries. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea provides some framework, but enforcement is nearly impossible in such remote regions. Small Arctic countries, Denmark, Norway, Canada, Iceland, find themselves in the center of a geopolitical tornado they never asked for. These nations, with relatively small populations and limited military capabilities, suddenly hold the keys to humanity's future. China offers them massive infrastructure investments. Russia proposes lucrative energy partnerships, and the U.S. promises military protection and security guarantees. Each of these countries must make impossible choices about who to align with in the Arctic game. The pressure is immense. Billions of dollars in investment versus security concerns. Economic opportunities versus sovereignty issues. Short-term gains versus long-term independence. Greenland, with a population of just 56,000 people, suddenly finds itself at the center of world power's attention. This is one of the most sparsely populated places on Earth, where everyone knows everyone else, yet it has become a focal point for global superpowers. Local politicians in Nuuk receive offers to build international airports from Beijing, establish military bases from Washington, and develop massive mining projects from Moscow. The transformation is surreal. Inuit communities that have lived traditionally for generations are suddenly negotiating with some of the world's most powerful corporations and governments. A small island with more polar bears than people has become a bigger geopolitical problem than most nation-states.
But the most interesting and terrifying part lies ahead. Experts predict that by 2050, a quarter of all world trade will pass through Arctic routes. The economic implications are staggering. Whoever controls Arctic shipping lanes will gain influence over global commerce that dwarfs current choke points like the Suez Canal or Strait of Hormuz. The Northern Sea Route could become the most valuable piece of real estate on the planet. Ships traveling between Asia and Europe could save millions of dollars per voyage, cutting fuel costs and delivery times dramatically. Major shipping companies are already investing in ice-capable vessels and Arctic navigation technology. The Arctic race is just beginning, but its results will determine who dominates the world for the next 50 years. China, Russia, and the US are ready to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to not lose in this competition. Military budgets are being redirected toward Arctic capabilities, diplomatic efforts focus increasingly on Arctic nations, and intelligence agencies are prioritizing Arctic intelligence gathering. And Greenland has become the main prize in this game, the island that could tip the balance of Arctic power permanently. Whoever controls Greenland controls the gateway to the Arctic Ocean, the approaches to both Europe and North America, and access to resources that could power the next century of economic growth. Melting glaciers open not only new opportunities, but create new threats that humanity has never faced before. The Arctic is becoming the place where humanity's future is being decided, yet most people remain completely unaware of what's happening in the world's most remote region.
The invisible war for the Arctic has already begun, fought not with conventional weapons, but with investments, cyber attacks, diplomatic pressure, and economic influence. The question isn't whether this conflict will escalate, but who will emerge victorious. And the winner will shape the global order for generations to come, controlling resources, trade routes, and strategic positions that will determine the fate of nations.